Welcome, Yate. Welcome everyone to the BIA's annual webinar on the Resilience Program's Fiscal Year 2023 Awards FAQ session. So we appreciate you coming in and joining us for this webinar. Yate, she'e Nikki Cooley in Shia, Kinya Ani Nishla, look at the Nebashichin. Is it lana a dashinale to a head a dashiche? I quit our Dene son in the Shle. I'm from the Dene Nation. I am from the Tyron House clan, born for the Reed people. I serve a dual role at the Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals, a co-director of the Institute, as well as the co-manager of the Tribes and Climate Change program. And it's this program that we partner with the BIA's branch of Tribal Climate Resilience on several projects, but including this annual webinar. So I just have a few housekeeping items for you before I pass it on. As you enter or get yourself grounded for this webinar, just a reminder of a few things. Yes, the meeting will be recorded, and any presentations, materials that are shared will be shared after the approval of the BIA team. And so yes, it will be recorded, and we will post a slide reminding you of that again, or anyone that joins late. Any recorded material will be posted on the ITEP climate change website, and a notification will be sent out. The next housekeeping rules, please mute your microphone, and otherwise the team will be muting. So we'd love to have you guys please, out of respect for the speaker and background noise, which can overtake a lot of the speaker's audio. So please mute your migrophone. Your questions will be answered, or may be answered, after the main presentation. Please save your questions for the Q&A. And if you're going to forget, write it down, or you can put it in the chat box. But please, we will have those questions answered. If we don't get to it, we type it in, and then we will try and answer it after the webinar via email. You're welcome to use the chat feature and reactions emojis respectfully throughout the presentation. You know, give a emoji clap to Elisa and her team as they do this wonderful presentation. Also, speaking of the chat box, you're welcome to introduce yourself in the chat box. Let us know your name, your title, what tribe or tribal organization or non-tribal organization you're representing, and where are you located in this country. So please let us know where you're calling from. So remember, if you've just entered the room, all questions will be answered after the main presentation. So please, all questions will be answered after the main presentation. Please introduce yourself in the chat box. And with that, the next slide, I just want to let you know, if you don't know who ITEP is, we're the Tribal Climate Change program, the Tribes and Climate Change program, excuse me, was founded in 2009, and we have had a wonderful partnership with the BIA's climate program since then, working on trainings and technical support with tribes throughout the country. So as they prepare for climate change and the transition to clean energy sources. So, and you'll see a little bit of our team right there, but I just want to give a shout out to Kelsey Morales, who really helped put this together, working behind the scenes to make sure it goes smoothly. And also a shout out to Karen Cazzetto, my co-manager as well. So welcome everybody. And with that, on the next slide, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to my dear colleague, Elisa Morris. So take it away. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Nikki. Thanks, ITEP team. My name is Lisa Morris. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a member of the Anishinaabe, Nahiawak, or Chippewa Cree tribe. I'm a climate planning specialist for the Bureau of Indian Affairs branch of Tribal Climate Resilience. And I am going to pass it to our branch chief to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Mosley. I'm the branch chief for the Tribal Climate Resilience Branch. And I am Fallon Paiute Shoshone member and based in Sacramento, California. Really excited to be here and really excited about our new round of awards that we're announcing for this year. So happy to be here. Pass it on to Coral.
Thanks, John. Hawasivapani or Hawasikisiki, depending on what time of day it is, where y'all are joining from. Thank you for being here. My name is Coral Avery. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a natural resource specialist at the BIA branch of Tribal Climate Resilience. I'm also a tribal youth and climate liaison through the Northwest Climate Adaptation Science Center and a Shawnee tribal citizen. I'll pass it over to Elisa for the next slide.
So today we are hoping to cover the TCR, so Tribal Climate Resilience Program purpose, as well as the annual awards program purpose, just general overviews. And of course, dive into the fiscal year 2023 solicitation, what's new about it, how to create an account and apply on the portal, and then go through some helpful resources and partnerships to begin development of your proposals if you need assistance, and then finishing off with some FAQs, and we're hoping to allow plenty of time for a live Q&A as well. It's the purpose of the webinar. So next slide. Thanks. I'll pass it back to you, Coral.
Yeah, so beginning with the purpose of our program, the annual awards program, and then our branch. There we go. So the branch of Tribal Climate Resilience, our purpose is to support climate preparedness and resilience for all federally recognized tribal nations and Alaska Native villages. And we do this primarily through technical assistance and financial assistance. Our technical assistance includes access to appropriate science, educational, and training opportunities. We have our regional liaison network, which we'll discuss more later. There's also regional tribal climate resilience coordinators who are our new staff as of the past year. That can help with location-based services. And then through financial assistance, of course, we have our annual awards program. And we also have a big boost from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law or Bill Funding and Inflation Reduction Act or IRA funding. And those have been able to support our community-driven relocation and habitat restoration work, which we'll get into a bit later. So the focus area for the branch of Tribal Climate Resilience, we prioritize issue areas, including extreme events, toxic or harmful algal blooms, permafrost degradation, ocean acidification, storm surges, sea level rise, and much more. And then our annual awards program purpose is to provide funding for federally recognized tribal nations and approved tribal organizations to achieve their climate adaptation, planning, and implementation goals. Through this, we support self-determination and sovereignty and hope to further the inclusion of Indigenous knowledge. And the planning and project design can minimize impacts, reducing the scale of emergencies, infrastructure damage, and threats to human health and well-being. All right, and I'll pass it over to Elisa to go over some of the details of this year's solicitation.
Next slide, please. Thank you. So like usual, our solicitation is open to federally recognized tribes and tribal organizations that serve federally recognized tribes as defined in 25 U.S. Code 5304L. So basically the same eligibility as previous years. The tribal organizations need to be able to receive Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act ISDEA funding through a 638 contract. So if you're involved or work for a tribal organization and would like to apply, just make sure that that's a funding mechanism that you can use to receive funding. Request for proposals open July 19th and closes October 13th, and we expect the award announcements to come out around January of 2024. In case you have a desire to look at it, the Federal Register list of federally recognized tribes link is there for you. And then the total amount available we have this year is about 120 million, which is by far the most we've ever funded through this program before, thanks to the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act funding. Other entities that aren't necessarily one of the authorized tribal organizations that we referenced may participate as sub-awardees if they partner with tribes on a project or a tribal organization. So if you are curious about it, definitely reach out to us or one of the regional liaisons that Coral's going to talk about later. And then just another note, this is the same as previous years as well. Project timeline should be no more than 2 years in length. Where you can find more information is always going to be our annual awards program site page. As you can see, we have several different helpful links there. The full solicitation itself is there. Our FAQ document is there, and we're going to be updating it with questions asked on today's webinar as well. We have guidance on who to contact if you're not sure about which point of contact in the region that you should reach out to for the type of assistance that you want. That document, and we're also going to help provide a little bit of guidance today too on that. And then also previous award summaries and solicitations. That's a really important one if you're looking for project ideas and the types of projects that we funded before, as well as our new revamped annual awards dashboard. Coral will cover that a little bit later. And then the webinar recordings there will be linked as well. So this year, we have only 2 categories of funding. This was not meant to be restrictive. It was meant to simplify the solicitation so that there's less types of activity standards or AKA criteria. We have planning and implementation. We fund pretty much the same types of projects that we have previous years. It's just the activity standards or criteria are going to be pretty standard depending on whatever type of project you want to apply for. So climate adaptation planning caps out at 250,000 max per award. It's designed to support climate change considerations into planning documents, vulnerability assessments, development of data analysis, supplemental monitoring, hosting of training and/or workshops focused on tribal climate adaptation and resilience, internships and/or youth engagement, travel to attend climate change related training and/or events. So similar to previous years. There is an asterisk on hosting training and/or workshops, and I did want to emphasize that because we are using the ISDEA funding mechanisms, we are unable to fund basically a tribe or a tribal organization that hosts a training where the beneficiaries or participants of the trainings, their tribal resolutions are not basically submitted along with the proposal. And we know how difficult that is. So unfortunately, it is a restriction that we figured out this past year. And so basically, if you are going to host a training or workshop, you will need a tribal resolution from all of the tribes that are benefiting. So knowing that, it's probably only going to be if you want to host for your own community or maybe a few other local communities where it might be feasible to get that resolution in. So yeah, just wanted to state that. And then the second category is climate adaptation implementation, which maxes out at 4 million per award. It can be considered either construction or non-construction activities, although primarily you're going to see construction activities and implementation. and it supports actions that are already pre-identified in an existing tribal plan. It doesn't have to be a climate adaptation plan. It can be integrated resources management plans, forest management plans, agricultural resource management plans, ecosystem restoration, and others as well. If you're curious about what types of projects we have funded through implementation, you can definitely go on our website and find previous projects. Last year, I think we funded a regional community greenhouse program, and then also like water resiliency, weather ready programs, things like that. So feel free to check that out. Next slide, please. So in addition to our 2 main categories of funding, this year we also have 3 set-asides. And I really I hope I can make this clear because we've already received a lot of questions about it. The set-asides are completely separate from the categories. So they have a separate activity standard, AKA criteria, and they're going to be ranked separately. The funding pot that's reserved for these are also separate. So it's not a subset within a category. They're completely separate. So just wanted to note that. Our first set aside is the first time awardees. So if you're familiar with our solicitation previous years, this used to be the capacity building category, very similar to it. So basically it's a stepping stone. It's to perform a scoping needs assessment and develop a planning proposal for future funding cycles. It's designed to assure equity for tribes at different places in their climate resilience and adaptation efforts, and primarily for tribes that don't have necessarily dedicated staffing or climate programs and are more at the beginning stages of program development. And then also, just because of this, we want to note that only tribes who have not received a planning or implementation award in the past are going to be eligible for that set aside. And if you're curious, if you're new in your position and maybe don't know whether or not the tribe has received a planning or implementation award, feel free to reach out to us and we can let you know. The second set aside is the habitat restoration and adaptation set aside. This one is, we can thank IRA funding for this one. Basically, it's for habitat restoration of coastal ecosystems. So any different kind of ecosystem fits under this category, wetlands, marine systems, fire prone and arid, forest, or other critical ecosystems. It also funds emergency restoration, so habitat and or adaptation projects that are due to natural disaster. And third, for equity and restoration projects. So any of our funds, including these set-asides, can be used as cost share for you to leverage with other federal agency awarded habitat restoration and or adaptation projects. So that's really exciting. And then finally, our third set-aside is the relocation, manage, retreat, and protect in place coordinator set-aside, which is designed to support tribes that have limited technical staffing capacity to hire a full-time relocation, manage, retreat, and protect in place coordinator. This person will support and organize community involvement, coordinate with federal and non-federal partners, and develop community RMP plans and or implementation actions. And we just want to note that communities that are at the highest risk tiers will be considered. And so if you're wondering what that means, it's outlined in the activity standards, AKA criteria. And so, yeah, just take a look at this solicitation for that one. Next slide, please. And then finally, we have the same application content requirements as normal, minus the indirect costs. That might come up today. We are not doing indirect costs on budgets this year. We want to make sure that tribes are able to claim their contract support costs through ISDIA funding mechanism. And so we make sure that all of the budgets that you submit don't have IDC on them, basically. So the cover page, we used to have like templates. We don't have those anymore. The cover page is basically just going to be entered on the e-form of the application portal. And then once you're finished with your application submission, it will basically give you a receipt of what you sent in. And so all of the information is going to be generated on a cover page for you. You can, if you really want to do your own cover page and submit it with your proposal, that's fine. But yeah, just letting you know that you don't have to anymore since it's kind of set up that way. The tribal resolution or cover letter is required. However, when you first apply, you can do either a tribal resolution or a cover letter. The tribal resolution isn't required until the project is selected for funding. So after you're notified of award, that's when it's due. So you have some time to get the resolution together. It doesn't have to be submitted initially. The proposal, same as always, we asked for a 6-page limit here, and you'll just attach it in the portal. It's supposed to describe the proposed project and associated activities. The budget table and narrative, we are asking for Excel as a preference because the majority of them have to be converted to Excel anyhow. We are just requesting that, although it's not a requirement. And then the budget narrative as well. Make sure, please, that they align and break down all of the costs associated with the project. So for instance, if you have like a $20,000 lump sum for a sub-awardee, please make sure that that's broken down as well. You know, like $10,000 in supplies or something. Just make sure that all of the costs are broken down, because there may be some disallowed costs hidden in there, and we want to make sure that everything is transparent when we review. And now I will pass it back to Coral for the next portion.
Great, thanks, Elisa. So now that we've covered what we have going on for this fiscal year, I'm going to point out the aspects that are new. So changes from 2022 to 2023. As Elisa mentioned before, the number of categories were reduced just to simplify the solicitation. We hope that this will help with the ease of applying as well, if there's just too many choices of how to focus in your application, as there might be overlap between the goals of specific projects. So on the right side here, we have all of the 13 categories that were listed for 2022. Your applications can absolutely cover these topic areas still. They will just fit within either the categories of planning or implementation. And then within the two categories of planning and implementation, there are no exclusions to use these project types that we funded in the past. The categories of funding are separate from the set-asides, and the set-asides are not nested within the two categories. We want that to be really clear. Each category and set-asides have their own unique criteria or activity standards as well. Great. And then two more, there's some increases to the categories of funding. So our implementation category has increased to 4 million as the max per award, and this is to support large-scale projects. And then, of course, we have the 3 new set-asides, which are all significant amounts of funding. There's also a new platform for applying, and this was also done to hopefully create ease within the application process. And one thing to note, applicants must create an account in order to apply at least 24 hours prior to applying. So if you're unsure, just be sure to do it in advance so that it's ready if you do move forward with an application. And then this last slide for this section just shows our funding changes over the year by category. You can also see how the total amount of funding has increased from 2021 to 22. And of course, this year with the 120 million, you can also see the change in total awards. And we have all of this information on our website as well. You can look at all of the past solicitations as well as the past awards. And with that, I'll pass it back to Elisa to discuss more on the application process.
Thanks. So if you go to the next slide, please. How to apply. So I shared that our application portal is linked on the annual awards program webpage, and you have to create an account before you apply, as Coral mentioned. It's pretty easy. There's just, a few fields there, your name, your organization, and such. And then after you submit it, it might take up to 24 hours to process on our end, but likely less time than that. And once you are in, you'll get notified, and you can use that link to sign in. And once you sign in, you'll need to do forgot your password and then reset your password. That's how it's automatically set to. And then once you're finally in, then you can submit your application. And the application portal is really nice. There's a little timeline at the top. So you can navigate to different pages as well. And there's a link to the solicitation throughout the application process as well, in case you need to reference it at any time. And if you have questions about the portal for help, please reach out to our regional contacts, which are on our regional contacts page on our website. We'll make sure to share all the links too after we're done presenting. And so it's a pretty easy process. If you have questions, always just reach out to us. One thing I did want to share is that your account will be associated with a UEI. So the reason we put the sam.gov link in the chat is because if you need to look up a UEI or anything like that, it's going to be on sam.gov. And then, back to Coral.
Great. Thanks, Elisa. All right, so diving into some helpful resources, we'll start with our TCR regional coordinators. These are BIA staff that have a regional specific focus. You can see them all here on the map. We're currently hiring for our Eastern regional coordinator, as well as a second Alaska regional coordinator. But all other regions have somebody that you can connect with now. And our directory page, looks like Elisa and I both put into the chat, so you can check out who those folks are, as well as some other useful contacts. And as changes are made, those will be updated on our website. And then in addition to the regional coordinators, we also have the Tribal Climate Resilience Liaison Network. Thanks, Elisa, for putting that in the chat too. You can use that link to find who your regional liaisons are. To quickly explain how the liaison network works, the liaisons are non-federal employees. They are employed by tribal organizations within their regions. Their funding comes from BIA, Tribal Climate Resilience, and they also connect to all the extensive climate science resources of the USGS climate branches, the Climate Adaptation Science Centers. So the liaisons have a wealth of experience and resources and are happy to connect tribes and tribal organizations to all of that. And you can see the logos of some of the tribal orgs on the bottom of the slide here that they are employed by. And on the next slide, we'll show the majority of the current liaisons. Some changes will definitely take place in the near future. I saw Jake is actually on the call today. So Jake Palazzi is our New Mexico liaison, and Cynthia Naha just came on as our senior liaison for the Southwest region. So they will be added on our website soon, and as additional staffing changes occur, they will also be updated on the directory page. So in deciding who to contact between the regional coordinators and the liaisons, again, the regional coordinators are federal staff. You can reach out to find out whether a project would be appropriate for TCR funding, what category would be most appropriate to apply for. You can also ask questions about whether your tribe or organization is eligible for a set aside, how to apply all of the UEI and SAM.gov registration, post-award project changes, and anything that's specific to the BIA regarding specific technical assistance eligibility or frequently asked questions. Definitely reach out to our TCR staff, our regional coordinators. And then for the liaisons, again, they're non-federal staff. You can reach out for questions about regional writing retreats, workshops, events, or other gatherings to connect with things that are happening in your region or even beyond nationally as well. They also have access to grant writing tools, trainings, resources, and can connect you with tribal organizations, academic institutions, and more. They can also provide proposal review and tips. So they're great to reach out to as well, though we will note they cannot write the application for you, but they can provide that kind of first set of external eyes on your application before putting it in. And then if you don't know where to start, we have our annual awards program dashboard on our website. Here you can search the online version of the map by activity type, region, or sector. There's lots and lots of different tools to mess around with on this. And you can find more information and links to each project that has been funded in the past, and also see the areas where more funding has been awarded. In addition to that, as was mentioned earlier, we have our award summaries and all of the past solicitations on our website. Those are also accessible through our annual awards page. And Elisa is continuing to put direct links in the chat too for ease of access. On these, you can see the total numbers of awards per year and the total amount funded. And it also breaks down by category and has descriptions for each of the projects that were awarded. And lastly, we have a handful of other links here. This will all be shared along with the recording of the webinar, so don't feel the need to write these all down really quickly, but just a couple to highlight. Of course, our homepage, you can find everything relating to TCR and annual awards. There's a tribal resilience resource guide that we have on the website as well. ITEP, who shared earlier, has a wealth of information that can also support your efforts with applying for the awards. The University of Oregon has a tribal climate change guide. This is also just a huge wealth of information. They have a newsletter that you can subscribe to. Things are most relevant towards or for the Northwest region, but they also share things that are nationally relevant. They also have a data bank of climate adaptation plans, hazard mitigation plans, and other such plans that are shared by tribes with the public. And then lastly, we don't have time to chat about it, but the cooperative ecosystem studies units may be a useful spot to check out more information. And with that, I'll pass it back to Elisa and we'll get started with some of our frequently asked questions.
Thanks, Coral. And I did see that question in the chat about 2 categories. I just want to reiterate that we are funding the same types of projects as previous years for the most part. It's not meant to be restrictive. We just wanted to simplify the solicitation so it wasn't so long. Okay, our first question that we have. So by the way, our FAQ document is very, very long. There is a ton in there and it's sorted by, section. If you want to search for an eligibility question or a budget question, then you can do that in the document. We're just going over, 10 to 12 of the most frequently asked questions. Yeah. Okay, so getting started with eligibility. Do previous awards limit applicants from receiving another award in the same category of funding? So the answer is no. There's no limitation during separate fiscal years. So long as the project is different as previous year projects or builds upon previous work. So, please don't submit the same application that you did last year. The government can't fund the same work twice, so as long as it's building upon previous work, then there is no limit to the number of years that you apply. Next slide, please. So application resources. In the solicitation, it states that tribal organizations who are proposing to develop a product on behalf of a tribe must have a resolution from the tribe. Do we need one if we are applying for the planning category applications? So tribal organizations must have Public Law 93-638, contracting authorities to apply, as I mentioned earlier. Tribal resolutions are only required to enter into the contract. So if the proposal is selected for award, just make sure that at that time that you're ready with the resolution. If you submit a proposal prior to the deadline and are missing anything, will you be notified? So yes and no on this one. Yes, if you submit the proposal at least 2 weeks prior to the deadline. If your proposal is submitted less than 2 weeks prior, it can't be guaranteed. We will still try to, skim through and make sure it has all of the required documents. And also the application portal is set up so that if you're missing something, it won't let you fully submit, which is really good guardrails. But yeah, so see the solicitation language in the dates and addresses to submit application section for more information on how to apply. Next slide, please. Okay, so for definitions, how does TCR define construction and what phases are included in the planning and implementation categories? So TCR uses the 48 Code of Federal Regulations, section 2.101 definition, which defines construction as construction, alteration, or repair, including dredging, excavating, and painting of buildings, structures, or other real property. So essentially, earth moving activities. TCR funds phase 1, so preliminary, phase 2, planning, and sometimes elements of phase 3, design, through the planning category. The implementation category is meant to fund phase 3 and phase 4 construction activities. So if you have more questions around that, CFR is definitely the place to look. Section 900.112 is going to have a ton of details on construction if you want to take a look at that. Next slide, thank you. Funding categories. So can applicants submit the same proposal to multiple categories? We suggest not. A tribe may apply to more than one category. However, the tribe must submit separate and different proposal applications to each category. Additionally, tribes should only submit one proposal per category, since only one proposal per category will be funded. Please see the funding limitation section in the full solicitation for more information. If that's not clear, if you're unsure of certain funding limitations, you can always reach out to us. I hope that's clear, but one thing that I didn't mention earlier that I should have is that we have a funding limitation of 2 planning awards and 1 implementation award. So that's the maximum overall number of awards that you can, or one entity can receive. And this is to promote equity and spread the benefits as broadly as possible into as many tribes as possible. And then only 1, award per category or set aside. The second question is, can applicants submit multiple proposals for components of the same large project into different categories? We also recommend no on this one. If you're submitting multiple proposals, please provide separate proposals that aren't dependent on one another being awarded in case they're not all funded. Projects may be integrated, but should provide standalone work separated into different category proposals. Each request amount should not exceed the maximum limit. Okay, another one on funding categories. Is funding available to bring on tribal staff to build climate capacity? Yes, applicants may apply to either the first-time awardee or RMP cohort set-asides to build internal capacity. And then just noting that this is generally non-reoccurring funding, and so it may not be sufficient to cover a long-term position. However, the RMP coordinator funding is available for 2 subsequent years, so 3 total years, if that one you are selected for award. Project conditions. Can an implementation proposal include multiple tasks that are not related if they're identified in an existing plan? Yes, an implementation proposal can include multiple tasks that may not be necessarily related to one another, only if they are mentioned in an existing plan. Implementation categories of funding are likely to be highly competitive. Each task will need to be responsive to the activity standards criteria within the solicitation. If some tasks are less ready than others, it could end up bringing the overall score of the proposal down. So just making sure that all of those sub-projects are at the same level of readiness would be wise if they are not related to one another. Next slide, please. Okay, implementation and construction. Can implementation occur off reservation to address climate threats? Can project-specific NEPA be included in implementation funding? So if the tribal resolution states this, as well as all other parties who are involved, private entities, state, federal, et cetera, other jurisdictions, just keep in mind that all regulations, codes, et cetera, relevant to that land jurisdiction would need to be addressed in the proposal as well. And of course, we know that NEPA is a good tool to pull the information together. The second question is there technical assistance from BIA that tribes can access regarding help with engineering or other infrastructure? So TCR now has a small number of engineer, construction, and environmental contractors that may be able to provide technical input on relocation, manage, retreat, and protect in place projects. However, they are not going to be able to help develop or write the proposals. Similar to the liaisons, they can review and provide input or expertise as needed. And I'm going to pass it off to Coral to take us through the rest of the questions.
Okay, thanks, Elisa. So the next question, if an applicant is proposing to work with tribal partners, do they need a resolution from these partnering tribes? This kind of relates to one of the questions earlier, but one, if any partners will receive funding from the award, or two, for the proposal to be eligible for supplemental points, then yes, a resolution or a letter of support from each tribe or partner is required. And a note on this, the proposals to host trainings and support travel for other tribes to attend must include tribal resolutions from all benefiting parties or participating tribes in order to receive funding. This does not apply, though, to authorized tribal organizations, which already have resolutions from member tribes. And then the next, is there a match requirement for any of the awards? The quick answer is no, there's not a match requirement. Though once awarded, the tribe may use PL 93-638 funds as match when applying for other federal funds, as long as the funds are spent within the originally proposed scope of the project, so that there is potential to build off of the TCR award and really amplify the amount of funding for your projects. All right, and then will BIA let applicants who were not selected for funding know more about why they were not awarded? So in short, we very much try to do this, yes. An applicant may request feedback on their proposal if it's not successful, in order to strengthen it for future potential application submissions. So please just reach out to us so that we can provide that feedback from the reviewers. And you can email us at resilience.funding@bia.gov for that. Our email address is also all across our website. And the feedback is combined from reviewer commentary throughout the review process. So it's not just coming from one person. And the next question, can I make changes after the award is made? Yes, you can. We understand that things change. Just contact the BIA awarding officials, technical representative, or the AOTR, and the Office of Self-Determination or Office of Self-Governance awarding official, and then they can help work out within scope modifications and get that into the award file so that it properly represents your application. We will, a small caveat though, changes cannot be made to the overall scope of work since proposals were reviewed and selected largely based on the proposed scope. So these are just if some of the smaller things change over time. All right, and that concludes all of the common FAQs that we have, though we do have time for open Q&A. Quickly, Elisa and I do have our emails if you'd like to contact us on anything regarding this presentation. Though again, if you have specific questions, please reach out to the resilience.funding@bia.gov email. That way we can send it to the person on our team that can more specifically or appropriately respond to your questions or concerns. And then I also want to reiterate that a link to this recording and other materials will be available on our website. And I believe ITEP is sharing it on their website as well, if I'm not mistaken. I'll pass it over to Elisa if you have any final words before we hop into the Q&A.
I don't have any final words, except for I hear that we've been getting a lot of questions on implementation being only for tribes. So yes, implementation categories are only for federally recognized tribes, not tribal organizations, and the same for the first time awardee set aside and the RMP coordinator set aside. Those will only go to tribes. So in essence, then the category 1 planning and the habitat restoration and adaptation non-construction can go to tribal organizations. Feel free to raise your hand and we can do some live Q&A here.
Yeah, this is Nikki. Sorry to barge in there, but I bet I don't know if Kelsey, you're keeping track of the questions. And if you want to start from the top, if we can do that.
Yep, I can do that. Sorry, I've got a couple screens going here. So John has done a great job of answering. So I'm going to start from where I think I saw John not answer anymore. So we've got okay, what are the constraints regarding the land that implementation can take place? For example, tribal lands, public lands, private lands, etc.
So I think we kind of answered this a little bit earlier. Basically, the Indian Affairs funds tribes to, sorry, the mission of Indian Affairs is to protect tribal and trust treaty and trust resources. So our primary objective then is to fund projects that take place on those lands. If the lands are co-managed, then, you know, that's also possible to do projects on off-reservation lands and just making sure that all of those jurisdictional policies are applied, policies and regs are applied. I hope that answers the question, but I also welcome John, if you would like to add more to that response.
I think you said it well. Our primary mission is to protect trust assets in BIA. I think funding that goes to doing that, carrying out our mission, would be the highest priority. If we go off reservation, maybe it's something off reservation that is a threat to tribal community, or it might have to do with co-management of, salmon species. But I would say apply, and we'll take it into consideration, knowing that the priority is to protect trust assets and focus on reservation land, trust land, and fee land within reservations.
Great. Okay, so the next question that I'll ask, so just to confirm, are folks able to submit applications for planning, implementation, and each set aside, if applicable?
Yes. You can. The maximum number of awards that you can receive, though, are 2 planning and 1 implementation. So I believe that it's stated in the solicitation in the funding limitations section. So if it's non-construction, basically, then it's considered planning in that sense, not the planning category, but the planning phase. And so, for instance, a given tribe can receive like a habitat restoration and adaptation implementation funding and a first time awardee set aside and a RMP coordinator set aside, because those 2 are both more so like the planning phase or non-construction, and plus 1 implementation. I hope that makes sense. But the solicitation, I'm going to pull up the solicitation language so that we can just kind of have the funding limitations in there as stated, but
I just want to also say that we weren't trying to create any confusion, but also our intention was equity in making sure that enough funding was available for many tribes. Also, we're going from 45 million that was awarded last year to 120 million available this year, and that is about 266% increase in available funding. So please apply for 3 awards.
Great. Okay, moving on to our next question. The question comment is, several Alaska tribes have asked that our tribal organization apply for and manage projects on their behalf. The request for proposal states there's a limit of 2 planning awards and 1 implementation/construction award per tribe. Does this limit apply to tribal organizations?
so I think we kind of answered this one a little bit earlier, that tribal organizations are pretty much only eligible for the Category 1 planning and the set aside for habitat restoration and adaptation. So that being said, you can apply for and receive 2 Category 1 planning awards, or 1 planning and 1 habitat restoration and adaptation, not construction.
And it would be possible, I guess, for an Alaskan tribe to apply for implementation funding, but then still work with that tribal organization to help carry out the responsibilities.
Okay, great. Doing a lot of multitasking here, so thanks for bearing with me. So next question we've got is, will the, I want to say BABA, but BABA Act be applicable?
So the Build America, Buy America Act is a part of the IIJA or bill. And so I believe that it does apply, but I'm not sure. I'm not too familiar with BABA, so I don't know if John has anything to add there as well.
I think we might have to ask someone in our organization that might be knowledgeable if it does apply. Sometimes when we use funding through a mechanism like 638 contracts or compacts, some of those requirements don't necessarily apply. So we would have to work up our chain and get a direct answer on that to know for sure.
Okay, great. Next question that we've got is, can you use previous year's forms for things like capacity building category 6 scoping or travel?
I would recommend not doing that. Although it's a 6-page max limit, it doesn't necessarily need to be 6 pages long. So if you're able to address all of the activity standards for that first time awardee set aside in less than 6 pages, that's totally fine. Yeah, it does look different this year than previous years, so I wouldn't want to use those forms.
Great, thank you, Elisa. Next question we've got is, so the max number of projects that can be picked for funding for a single entity is essentially 1 per category. For example, so if a tribe applies for 3 separate pots, they can theoretically receive funding for each.
Yes, 1 per category. And I did state a few minutes ago that someone could get 2 category 1 planning awards, but what I meant is 2 planning phase awards. So sorry to confuse, 1 award per category is the max amount. You can get multiple awards across categories and set asides, but only 1 award per category or set aside. I hope that's clear. Let me know if it's not.
Yeah, just to hopefully add more clarity to that, if we have the category 1 and 2, the set asides are not nested underneath them. They're all side by side. They're all on equal playing fields. They don't have the name category, but if you want to think of them that way, I suppose you can. But just please remember the other details, I suppose, of them, like which ones are applicable only to tribes versus tribal organizations, and all the other specificities of them.
Great, thanks all. We'll go to one more chat question and then we'll go to the person who has their hand raised. So for the set aside categories, is there a cost cap for restoration projects?
So for the set aside habitat restoration and adaptation, there is no funding limit for each award. Although I will say that we do have a maximum funding cap, like for that set aside is 35 million. And so we just want to make sure you know, that you're not applying for more than that amount. And also to try and promote equity, you know, we encourage large projects, but maybe not that full amount either. We want to be able to spread the benefits to multiple tribes. So just consider that.
Great, thank you, Elisa. So we'll go to Tawana. I hope I'm saying your name correct, for you to answer to ask your question. And just want to remind folks to keep it brief with your questions if you're asking out loud here. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to you if you'd like to unmute.
Thank you. You may have answered this question while I was having spotty connectivity. If the only language that a tribe has about climate resilience and adaptation is in a multi-hazard mitigation plan, does that count as having a plan? That's my part A of the question. And B, if it doesn't count as having a plan, can planning and implementation funds be used to update that plan to include climate resilience?
Thanks, Tawana. So the answer is yes. It doesn't have to be a climate adaptation plan specifically. The multi-hazard mitigation plan, if there are actions related to addressing climate change impacts, then you can implement actions that are already pre-identified in that plan. And our planning category is, it's basically, you can incorporate climate change considerations into any of your tribal plans that address climate change in them. So it doesn't have to be just for writing climate adaptation plans.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So we'll take another question from the chat and then we'll go to you, Max. So for implementation, is there a bigger focus on construction or restoration?
Construction is more so being used technically here, where construction contracts are different than just a non-construction. We call them Model 108 contracts. Construction contracts, they utilize subpart J of the CFR. And so those are, or I'm sorry, of ISDEA. And so just we use that technically. So restoration can or doesn't need to involve construction activities. Restoration is more so, related to the purpose of the funding. If you're restoring an ecosystem or a subsystem or process. I hope that's clear, but I also welcome Coral and John to add if I missed anything there.
Yeah, I think you got it. But if there's any follow-up on that question, please feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like any further clarification.
Great. All right, Max, you're up.
Thanks. This is Max from Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium. My question is, can you share more about how TCR evaluates risk prioritization? So in the RFP, there's points awarded for this, and it mentions kind of describe how you stand on a priority list. My question is, how does BIA evaluate that kind of nationwide across different risk types? Like, do you have a matrix that you could share, for example? Thanks.
Hi, Max. Good to hear you. We don't have a one specific rating system or matrix. It's up to the applicant to express the risk that they are, imposed by the climate change effects. So if there is like a national or regional document that or an assessment that has their level of risk already assessed, that's going to be huge, as well as like vulnerability assessments that their own tribe or themselves have done, I think is also pretty telling. So yeah, we don't have any one standard way of doing it.
Okay, so reviewers make a subjective assessment based upon other applications. They make an opinion and assign points. Is that right?
I wouldn't say it's subjective in the sense that the applications are being compared one against another. They're being compared on their own merit against the criteria. So when we're talking about supplemental points for risk prioritization, it's going to be the extent that that tribe expresses its own risk and also identifies other, assessments that have been done to show that.
Thank you.
Yeah, in addition, I'll just add that we have multiple reviewers for each application, and we also have a process to help remove any biases, intentional or not, of course, that may be applied during the review process.
I think to the extent that you can show the risk and demonstrate that there's a higher risk based on whatever studies that have been done, vulnerability assessments, that makes your project more competitive overall. But like Elisa said, it's judged on its own merits.
Thanks very much.
Okay, we'll keep going with these questions here. Some more from the chat. So we've got, can you cover using the categories from 2022 for proposals in 2023 again?
So a review, do we want to go back to that slide maybe?
Sure. Do you remember what number that was?
Yeah, let me look really quick.
I was gonna say I can find it. Is that slide 17? What's new? Was the question around changes from 2022 to 2023 with categories?
Yes, I think so.
Slide 17.
Thanks.
There we go.
Ooh,
Oops.
okay. I think it's loading.
Yeah, it looks like it's loading, but while that's going,
Okay, there
I
we
think
go.
the best way to think of it is thinking of the 2022 categories as examples of topic areas. So if you have a project that requires travel support or is focused on youth engagement or internships or any of the categories that are listed here, these can all be topic areas within your proposals for applications within category 1, category 2, or any of the set asides.
All right, great. Thank you, Coral. So the next question we have is, will implementation awards be administered by BIA as construction contracts or as grants? What will be BIA's level of involvement during project implementation?
Implementation awards, depending on whether or not they have construction in them, will be administered through BIA awarding officials, whether you're working with this Office of Self-Governance on a compact agreement, or whether you're working with an awarding official at a regional office through a contract agreement. So they will be I guess have oversight and compliance and monitoring from the awarding official and their designated technical representative at BIA. I don't know if John wants to add anything else.
Sure, just an asterisk on that. Construction right now will be done through the 638 contract mechanism and not through the Office of Self-Governance compact mechanism. And that's because the Office of Self-Governance, they have not done amendments to compacts to carry out construction. I think they've only have done 2 construction projects ever in the Office of Self-Governance, and that was talking to the awarding official at OSG. So right now we're going to carry out construction activities under the implementation category through 638 contracts, even if you're a compact tribe under the Office of Self-Governance, just because of our own limitations and being able to award funding through that mechanism. This could change if OSG develops a process and has amended compacts and allows for construction to take place. There's changes under the Progress Act that also affects their ability to do so. So it's kind of a loaded answer or loaded question right now. But our simple solution is that we're going to do 638 contracts for construction, just because we know that is a vetted and reliable way that we can carry out those funding through that mechanism.
Great, thank you so much, all. We've got a couple more and just a little bit more time here. So what is the max duration for implementation projects, and can they start in 2025?
So we suggest project timelines be submitted no more than 2 years. However, we know that this is primarily approved by the awarding official, and we know that some agreements have gone out up to 5 years in length, but it's highly dependent upon the awarding official and negotiations. So we still suggest 2-year timelines. And can the project begin in 2025? I would say yes, but normally your period of performance is going to start when the agreement is put into place. I also welcome Coral and John to add.
Sure. Just thinking about it, if you were starting from scratch and you had a, let's say, an implementation award or habitat restoration award, and nothing has been done yet, so you want to get your design and permitting underway. Sometimes if it's a really complicated project, it could take 2 years just to do that part. So I would say build your timeline that is appropriate, and just make sure that it's understood why it might be up to 5 years. And it could be just because of the complexities of getting through the NEPA process. But you could build that into the project, and I think we would evaluate based on that and understand that sometimes complex projects can take a while.
Great. Okay, so moving on to the next question. It's a little longer here, so bear with me. Can a category 1 planning project include implementation of small demonstration projects for proof of concept, training, and/or design testing purposes? For example, a greenhouse demonstration project in one village to support training for multiple tribes in the region.
So category 1 planning does not support any form of earth moving activities or construction. So if there will be any of that in your implementation, then I would highly recommend applying to category 2 implementation instead of category 1. If there's rollout of activities, I would still suggest applying to category 2 implementation. If it's just planning and design and preparedness, I would say a category 1 planning is probably the one you want to apply for. So.
Okay, great. We've also got, is the budget separate from that 6-page limit?
Yes.
Yay, an easy one. Okay, kind of. Okay, so this is kind of a question and a comment paired together. When are the awards going to be awarded? Our organization was just awarded for last year's NOFO in this past July, meaning that there was ground loss to get ready for the next step in the project, and for planning purposes. And then also some feedback. It is best to not combine awards. For instance, combining the previous category 3, 4, and 5 is difficult to manage from both an admin and audit realm. It's better to have a different award number for each category.
Yeah, thanks, Willow. I see your comment there. So we're expecting the awards to go out around January 2024. We know that last year was very delayed, and we believe this to be an exception to the norm. And so we really are going to shoot for that January timeframe, and hope that by next summer, you can be implementing projects that you applied for this year. And thank you for that feedback. We will bring it back to leadership and consideration of future solicitations.
And I just wanted to say that I agree last year was an exceptional event in terms of getting awards out. And to some extent, we're still working on some of them, but we're going to make every effort to streamline this year's process and come up with better strategies in working with our field operations. So the regional offices and agency offices and the Office of Self-Governance that make all these awards, and make sure all questions are asked, and be better partners and monitors with them to make sure awards get out in a timely fashion. So it is on our radar, and we do apologize for last year, but also we're trying to make it better. So that is definitely on our mind and radar.
Great, thanks all. We'll go to Madhavan with their hand raised.
Thank you for the wonderful session. I was just wondering, do we have the old projects as open source or something like that? Thank you. The last year projects as open source are open source, or will they be, private to the organization? Thank you.
I'm sorry, was the question, do last year's or previous awards, if you have open awards, impede? Okay, no. You can definitely keep applying as long as the projects are different and you're building upon previous work.
Great, thank you. And then a question, I think we covered this, but we can double back. So as a reminder, only federally recognized tribes are eligible for implementation category of funding, though other entities may participate as subawardees. So is that accurate? So a tribal organization or an intertribal consortia, for example, can't apply for implementation category. It has to be a tribe.
This is correct. Only tribes are eligible for implementation.
Okay. Great. I think that's it. That is everything in the chat. So if folks have any other further questions, we'd invite you to go ahead and raise your hand and unmute and ask those out loud before we wrap up here. Max, back to you. We'll go there.
Thanks. The RFP says that tribes must maintain good standing for the purposes of future funding. I'm curious, is BIA evaluating past performance in this competition? I don't see anything in the criteria, but I wanted to ask.
I don't believe we're evaluating from that perspective, but in order for us as the federal government to make awards to a tribe, they do have to be, I guess, in good standing, eligible to receive awards, not under severe sanctions. So having meeting the criteria that's needed to be awarded funding. Also, there may be tribes that have internal disputes on who is the governing body, and if that issue has not been resolved, then it's possible we're not able to award funding to a tribe until that is resolved. And that's a rare exception, but it does happen from time to time. So we would rely on regions or agency offices to notify us if that is an issue that has come up.
Thank you. I have more questions, but I'm going to let others jump in.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Max. We'll go to Ava.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, go for it.
Yes, I'm wondering if this PowerPoint presentation will be available, whether it's email or on a website.
Yes, we will make sure that the presentation recording and all of the materials are posted to our website hopefully within about a week.
Okay, great. And that's this long link, the second or fourth paragraph down on this thank you page.
Yes, it's the bottom link on that page.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, I think that is all the questions we're going to take right now. I realize a couple just popped up. So we'll grab those and hopefully those can be answered in the larger FAQ that is compiled from this session. So I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Nikki to wrap us up here.
All right, thank you everyone for your wonderful questions. I'm really curious though, what's one more question that Max has? I think he's asking some really good questions. Do you have a short one? I don't know, is that possible?
I have several more. My next one is short, which is under implementation project feasibility category. 15 points are allocated for permitting, and I'm curious what's being evaluated there. Is it like the status of permitting, or is it kind of a demonstrated knowledge of how to do the permitting?
I always look at that one as that permitting has been completed or is significantly underway or close to being done.
So you want shovel-ready projects. You're not funding, like, in some cases, it's just a simple environmental assessment. We can do it pretty quick. But
it doesn't have to necessarily be shovel-ready, but it's just, it ranks higher if it is. And if it's not, then there might be less points assigned, but we welcome all proposals, even if it's to work on design and then the permitting process, understanding that folks are coming from all different places. And yeah, those are my thoughts. What were you going to say, Lisa?
Pretty much the same thing, that scoring is probably going to be in favor of the projects that are the most shovel ready for implementation anyway.
okay, thanks very much.
Max, let me give you, unless somebody else raises their hand, you have another question. We'll take one more and then we'll go ahead and wrap up.
Sure. Let's see. I think I'll ask, you guys are not funding more RMP. You aren't investing more in existing RMP coordinator positions through previous category 12. So I'm curious, how will TCR continue to support local staff that are currently funded by TCR because they're not eligible to FY23?
So the RMP coordinator cohort, the first year from last year, they will be reoccurring for this year and next year. So it's reoccurring two subsequent 3 total years, and they won't need to reapply every year. So we're hoping that this year we receive a whole batch of a new and second cohort. Hope that makes sense.
So tribes that received funding for local staff prior to category 12 can apply to the RMP category this year to continue their local staff, correct?
So tribes that received funding last year through category 12 will not need to apply again this year and won't be eligible this year because they're already going to receive a second year of funding and a third year of funding.
Yep. So FY20 or 21 tribes that have local staff funded by TCR, they can apply this year.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Older.
Yeah.
Yes. As long as they weren't a part of the first year cohort, they can apply.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you again for those great questions from everyone in the chat box and also verbally. John, Coral, and Elisa, thank you so much for the wonderful questions. It's a tedious process, so we really appreciate you taking the time to answer all the questions. If you're still on, as a reminder, this will be available on ITEP's website. We'll send out notification to everyone who registered and was able to attend this webinar. So, and all the materials will be on there. If you have any questions, you can email the BIA staff that you have on the screen, or you can just email, if it's easier, just email ITEP and then we can forward the questions to them. So ITEP will not answer any questions. I think it'd be more appropriate for the BIA staff to do those. So with that, thank you again. I don't know if there are any final words from BIA, but we'll go ahead and wrap up if you do not.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and reiterate that if you email the resilience.funding@bia.gov, that your email will be forwarded to your regional coordinator or other appropriate person within the branch of Tribal Climate Resilience. Other than that, thank you, Nikki. Elisa, I'm not sure if you wanted to say anything too, but we really appreciate ITEP for working on this with us.
Yes, and thank everyone too for helping on today and all of your great questions, and looking forward to chatting with you all in the future. Looking forward to your proposals.
And I just wanted to say thank you, ITEP. Thank you, Nikki. And thank you everyone for attending. We look forward to your proposals. Like I said, we have a lot more funding than we did last year available. So please, we welcome all your proposals and dream big. Appreciate it.
I like it. Well done. So with that, I send you off to have a good afternoon or evening, and we will see you soon. Hagonet.